everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me once again is attorney Angela Reddock-Wright. Angela, thank you so much for joining me again.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
There is some big news involving two Hollywood stars that I would love to get your take on. Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni agreed to a settlement in their really contentious legal battle that has been dragging on for the past close to year and a half. And this has been a really ugly fight. Over the past 18 months, we have seen claims of sexual harassment, a hostile work environment, extortion. The public even saw private text messages between Blake Lively and Taylor Swift. And the This Ends With Us co-stars were set to go to trial later this month over Lively's last remaining claims of breach of contract, retaliation, and aiding and abetting in retaliation. So to start off the conversation, as an attorney, were you surprised to hear they settled?
Absolutely not, because I'm an attorney, but I spend my day-to-day work as a mediator, helping parties through their counsel resolve highly disputed employment lawsuits and other lawsuits. So knowing that the great majority of employment cases in California, in the United States, I know this case was ultimately based in New York, but the great majority of employment cases across the country, even when they're high profile like this one, normally end in resolution and a settlement. So I was not surprised, and also not surprised that we saw the settlement essentially on the heels of the trial, which I believe was scheduled to begin in about 2 to 3 weeks from the time of the settlement.
Before we dive into the specific details of this case, why do most of these types of claims, these types of suits, these types of situations, why do they mostly end in settlements? Because Blake Lively's team was adamant, we're going to have our day in court, we're going to trial. And then, like you said, 2 weeks before, they settled.
Right. Well, of course, if you're represented by counsel and you're paying them a lot of money to represent you, you want them to be zealous on your behalf. You want them to be zealous advocates. And so I think that's what we were hearing both from Blake Lively's team as well as Justin Baldoni's team. So it's not surprising, very much like a boxing fight right before the fight. The boxers are like, I'm ready, let's go, we got this, right? So I think you always see that tenor, especially in highly litigated, high profile cases such as this case. But there are multiple reasons as to why parties settle. We don't always know because most settlements are considered confidential, which means the parties are not able to talk about them. They're generally only able to say that the matter was resolved and we've decided to move forward despite our differences. But I imagine here that there are probably a few reasons that Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni and their counsel would have recommended settlement. One is, with the jury, even, we love our juries and we need them, but we never know, how a jury's going to decide. Even if you feel like you have the best case since sliced bread, right? On either side, juries are unpredictable. So I imagine when both sides were looking at the facts, the legal arguments, and weighing the possibility of prevailing before a jury, even with the best of attorneys, they can't promise, they can't guarantee. None of us have a crystal ball. So the uncertainty of it all, and then the reputational risk here. Both this case has been highly litigated. But we've seen information come out about both sides that's possibly put a different light on their reputations. And so I think settlement also is a part of preserving their reputations, keeping them intact, maintaining the ability to move forward in Hollywood. A lot of their friends were going to be called as witnesses. You mentioned Taylor Swift, Taylor, and others. And those individuals, I'm sure, did not want to have to testify in this case. So it was also possibly, helping to preserve relationships with their friends, while the two of these individuals had a dispute, not bringing the rest of, or not further bringing the rest of Hollywood into the dispute. So I'm sure there are multiple factors, some which we'll never know, but it sounds like both sides decided that it's in their best interest from a personal perspective, a reputational perspective, and just the pure risk of not knowing what the outcome would be, and having a winner and loser in that situation. I'm sure all of those played into their reasons for settling.
And to that point, the internet was really ugly and really divided over this over the past year and a half. Depending on what corner of the internet you're on, it was either firmly Team Baldoni or Team Blake Lively. And it's also seemed to change with the tide depending on what type of news drops there were as the story played out. But both teams released this joint statement. And from your perspective as an attorney, I'm going to read it, and I would love if you read the tea leaves for us a bit. This is what they said. The end product, the movie It Ends With Us, is a source of pride to all of us who worked to bring it to life. Raising awareness and making a meaningful impact in the lives of domestic violence survivors and all survivors is a goal that we stand behind. We acknowledge the process presented challenges and recognize concerns raised by Ms. Lively deserved to be heard. We remain firmly committed to workplaces free of improprieties and unproductive environments. It is our sincere hope that this brings closure and allows all involved to move forward constructively and in peace, including a respectful environment online. So as an employment mediator here, can you decipher what that says and maybe what it doesn't say?
Well, it is very common, particularly in a high-profile matter like this, for there to be a joint statement issued. So that is not surprising. And what is noticeably not included in that joint statement, which shouldn't be, and I wouldn't expect it to be, but sometimes the public's like, well, who won? Are they admitting guilt? Are they admitting that there was a problem here? So what the great thing about a settlement and as a resolution is that neither party admits guilt, neither party claims that they prevailed in the lawsuit. So that's missing from the statement. What the statement does say, not unsurprisingly missing from the statement, but what the statement does say is, one, we had a great project together, which I agree. I saw the movie, really important movie in terms of this dialogue around sexual abuse, right? So they say that despite our dispute together, we did a very important project and brought awareness to a very important issue of sexual abuse and sexual assault and domestic violence. And it also says that we're going to continue to, outside of this lawsuit, now settled lawsuit, continue to bring light to and focus on educating the public and in particular work environments about the importance of domestic violence or domestic violence and preventing sexual harassment on sets and in the workplace. And then it says, we're both moving in our direction, our own direction, because we believe it's in the best interest of the parties to move forward. So I think it allows both of them to say that this was an important issue. We're both committed to it. We're not committing guilt. We're not suggesting that anyone won as a result of this lawsuit, but we are committed to making sure we do our part to ensure that these types of issues don't arise in the workplace or elsewhere. So it's a great statement that allows both of them to show their commitment to a very serious issue.
You would think that the settlement is the resolution here in this legal battle, but it doesn't seem to be the end of the road just yet. And reportedly combined, these legal teams, Justin Baldoni's as well as Blake Lively's, they have a really hefty price tag. Reportedly, that price tag is apparently in the neighborhood of $60 million. And Blake Lively is seeking attorney's fees as well as other damages. And before we get into that, I think it's really important to talk about the timeline here, starting in 2024. Just months after the movie came out in theaters, Blake Lively sued Justin Baldoni and his production company over allegations of sexual harassment and launching a campaign apparently to decimate her reputation. Justin Baldoni fought back in 2024. He filed a $400 million countersuit where he claimed Lively and her husband, Ryan Reynolds, launched a smear campaign against him. He also accused the couple of defamation and extortion, but that suit was dismissed in June of last year. Then in April of 2026, just a month ago, a federal judge dismissed the majority of Lively's claims because he deemed her role as an independent contractor, not as an employee. So 13 of her claims, including sexual harassment and defamation, were tossed. So the jury trial on the last remaining 3 claims including breach of contract, retaliation, and aiding and abetting in retaliation, that was set to begin in May of 2026, May 18th to be exact. So just 2 weeks before that was set to start, the teams agreed to a settlement like we talked about. That was last week. However, the legal fight doesn't seem to be over because Lively's team says she intends to seek attorney's fees and damages under California Civil Code Section 47.1, which is a California law that was passed to protect people who accuse others of sexual misconduct from retaliatory defamation suits. So, how successful do you think Blake Lively is going to be here?
Well, one, I'm surprised that the settlement that we've been speaking about did not also include a resolution of attorney fees and costs. Generally, there's one settlement in most lawsuits, employment lawsuits, and it includes a resolution to everything, including fees and costs. So I was a little surprised by that, but perhaps it was carved out because of the big price tag, as you just described, $60 million being claimed in attorney fees. But I imagine that those issues of fees and costs will also be resolved through mediation and through settlement. The parties will find their way to reaching a compromise on those fees, and it won't be for the full $60 million plus, but it'll be something likely, less than that. But I imagine that that's not going, since they've come this far and they've resolved the substantive part of the claims, that they also are likely to resolve outside of the court setting, in a private, mediated, confidential situation, the fees and costs aspects of this as well.
Who do you think is going to come out on top here? And maybe when you're looking at that joint statement, is there anything that can hurt Justin Baldoni here? Because do you think that this will be a problem for him? We acknowledge the process presented challenges and recognize concerns raised by Ms. Lively deserved to be heard. Do you think that the judge will consider that in his ruling?
Most likely not, because now we're talking, sort of something that's a little easier for the judge to dissect. The judge will probably ask to see the attorney, what they call a cost bill and a fee bill from the attorneys, and the judge will be able to walk through that to determine what the judge believes are reasonable fees and costs associated with this highly litigated case. But also, I believe that the judge is likely to encourage the parties either through the court system to go through what we call a mandatory settlement conference, where they meet with another judge and try to resolve the matter, or give the parties the option of going to private mediation with a mediator, a highly recognized mediator that can help them resolve the issue. But on this question of who's likely to pay, I mean, if you just gave that timeline, the set of lawsuits were initiated by Blake Lively against Justin Baldoni. And Baldoni's countersuit against Blake Lively was ultimately dismissed. And while her claims against him were dwindled down to just 3 claims remaining, it's still her lawsuit against Justin Baldoni. So it's her suit that's being settled, or that has been settled. And when it comes to fees and costs, it's her side asserting that as a result of her lawsuit, fees have been incurred, substantial fees have been incurred, substantial costs have been incurred, and now we'd like to resolve them. So there's no winner or loser in resolution and settlement. It's just parties coming to a resolution. But, Justin Baldoni's team is likely the one that would be paying, to resolve Blake Lively's claims of fees and costs.
So you do think that Baldoni will be on the hook here for her portion of those legal bills?
Yes, but not in the traditional sense of the word that the judge is likely to issue a ruling. The judge may or may not. I'm not sure procedurally how their attorneys are approaching this, but it could come from a ruling from the judge, where the judge would say, okay, I've reviewed the fee bills, I've reviewed the cost bills, and I'm ordering you, Justin Baldoni, to pay Blake Lively X amount for her fees and costs. It's likely to be a reduced amount, right? And if the judge doesn't make that ruling, the judge is likely to order the parties to a settlement conference or mediation where that would be negotiated in a confidential setting. We'd never know the amount that we likely would not know the amount they settled for, and it would be the second part of their settlement in their mediator process.
Both of their sides at the end of this, when the news of the settlement came out, claimed victory, right? They said their side won. It was a great day. Their side was feeling ecstatic. But as you and I talked about, I mean, a lot of reputational harm could have came from this. People were divided on what to think. A lot of details that didn't paint either one of them in a great light came out. Who do you think came out as a winner here? Who's the real winner? And especially when you factor in who's the winner in the court of public opinion, and how much does that matter?
Well, I'm biased. I'm a mediator, right? So I think in situations like this, I don't think there are any clear winners or losers because this did not go forward to a jury trial where a jury makes that decision. We believe this person, we don't believe this person, or we find for this person, we don't find for this person. So the benefit of a mediated solution or a mediated settlement is that really both sides walk away as winners. Both sides walk away with the ability to say, this was resolved privately. Yes, there was a highly litigated dispute, which we were prepared to go, to a full jury trial on, but we opted not to. So I think they both walk away being able to take the factual issues, the legal issues that came out over this last 18 months with the ability to spin them how they want, with the ability to, say, although I could have prevailed, although I could have won before a jury, I opted best interest of, it could be best interest of myself personally, my career, my family, my business. We opted to resolve this. So I think the winners here are their overall long-term interests, the interest in maintaining their reputation in Hollywood. They're both, young by Hollywood standards. So maintaining their ability to go on and to continue to act, to direct, to produce, and to have this behind them without the wrinkle of a potential jury verdict against either of them. So I think they're both winners here. I think Hollywood's a winner. A very important set of issues came forward as a result of the movie, as a result of this lawsuit. And I think, it's another step in the Me Too movement in Hollywood, in entertainment. It's another step toward advancing issues, the very serious issues of domestic violence. So I think, we all become, I know it sounds kind of corny, but I think we all become winners as a result of this being resolved, because now the focus will be on resolution and having people speak to, the true, preventive issues involved with these issues raised. And we can focus on the big picture and not be so embroiled in this very dirty, what was sure to be a very dirty lawsuit and trial.
I appreciate you breaking that down for us, providing some clarity here, especially with your perspective here as an employment mediator. Angela Reddock-Wright, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for coming on. You are welcome back anytime.
Thank you, and I really appreciate it.